Okay, so here, Ledaber Mem has this question: Who was it? Okay, who was it? So let's go ahead and look at the question. You're asked to watch a video, and in that video, we are asked about 1 Samuel 28 and whether the spirit that came out from the ground is indeed Samuel. So that was the question. Is it Samuel or not? And then you begin to answer your question and then write it here. So it as I said, oh, this Ledaber is the longest. A lot of you really responded, and a lot of you really struggled with the question. And this is no surprise because Ledaber, I mean, First Samuel 28 is one of those things that will really make you pause and think, what is the text really teaching? And so, before we before I give my portion or my contribution to this discussion, I already made some in the discussion forum, but I would like to lay it out right now. So before we do that, let's proceed and read First Samuel 28, okay? So here, let's start with verse 1 and then let's read until the end. Later, the Philistines gathered their armies to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, "You understand that you and your men must not join my army." And David answered, "You will see for yourself what I, your servant, can do." And Achish said, "Fine, I'll make you my permanent bodyguard." And then we begin a new episode. Now Samuel was dead, and all the Israelites had shown their sadness for him. They had buried Samuel in his hometown of Ramah, and Saul forced out the mediums and fortune tellers from the land. The Philistines came together and made camp at Shunem. Saul gathered all the Israelites and made camp at Gilboa. When he saw the Philistine army, he was afraid, and his heart pounded with fear. He prayed to the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him through dreams, Urim, or the prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, so I may go and ask her what will happen." His servants answered, "There is a medium in Endor." Then Saul put on other clothes to disguise himself, and at night he and two of his men went to see the woman. Saul said to her, "Talk to a spirit for me. Bring up the person I name." But the woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done. He has forced mediums and fortune tellers out of the land. You are trying to trap me and get me killed." Saul made a promise to the woman in the name of the Lord. He said, "As surely as the Lord lives, you won't be punished for this." The woman asked, "Whom do you want me to bring up?" And then he answered, "Bring up Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed. And then she said, "Why have you tricked me? You are Saul." The king said to the woman, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" The woman said, "I see a spirit coming up out of the ground." Saul asked, "What does he look like?" The woman answered, "An old man wearing a coat is coming up." Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed face down to the ground. Samuel asked Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul said, "I'm greatly troubled. The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has left me. He won't answer me anymore, either by prophets or in dreams. That's why I called for you. Tell me what to do." Samuel said, "The Lord has left you and has become your enemy. So why do you call on me? He has done what he said he would do, the things he said through me. He has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it one of your neighbors, David. You did not obey the Lord. You did not show the Amalekites how angry he was with them. That's why he has done this to you today. The Lord will hand over both Israel and you to the Philistines. Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will hand over the army of Israel to the Philistines." Saul quickly fell flat on the ground and was afraid of what Samuel had said. He was also very weak because he had eaten nothing all that day and night. Then the woman came to Saul and saw that he was really frightened. She said, "Look, I, your servant, have obeyed you. I have risked my life and done what you told me to do. Now, please listen to me. Let me give you some food so you may eat and have enough strength to go on your way." But Saul refused, saying, "I won't eat." His servants joined the woman in asking him to eat, and he listened to them. So he got up from the ground and sat on the bed. At the house, the woman had a fat calf, which she quickly killed. She took some flour and mixed dough with her hands. Then she baked some bread without yeast. She put the food before them, and they ate. That same night, they got up and left. Okay, so this is 1 Samuel 28. And when I looked at your answers, there are two groups. Majority of you said this is not Samuel. Okay, majority, a very vast majority, and a few in the minority, and then the minority said this is Samuel. Okay, so before I give my answer, let me show you some samples, okay, of why you tend to say this is not Samuel. Okay, and this will give us an idea. Like this one right now, it's showing it's Rodney. He's the very first one to answer, and for him, this is not Samuel. Okay, so that's his opinion. That's his answer. Now, again, for those of you who answered this is not Samuel or this is Samuel, again, I just want to understand or see or read why you said so. Okay, and I want to know how you reason out. And for those who said this is not Samuel, there is a commonality as to why you said this is not Samuel. So let me show you. Okay, so number one is I will show you Carmina's because Carmina's answer kind of summarizes the objection to this to the idea that the spirit who came out of the ground is Samuel. So Carmina kind of summarized it, and those who said this is not Samuel it will fall under her category. So number one, he said God hates witchcraft. So this is the very first reason many of you would say, okay, this is not Samuel because God did not like, or prohibited conjuring, okay, or necromancy and the mediums, the spirit. It is specifically forbidden by the Lord. So Leviticus 19:31. So many of you said this is not Samuel because this could not happen because it's forbidden by the Lord. The Lord will not allow it to happen. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is that the spirit summoned is a demon spirit taking from the form of Samuel. Okay, so many of you who said this is not Samuel, and then you immediately said because this is a demon, a lying spirit, or Satan, or one of his, or one of the devil, So, and then you even quote, like what Carmina did, you quote some scripture from the New Testament, okay, and then you say that this is the reason why you think this is not Samuel. And then finally, number three, I think she and Rodney and some of you mentioned number three, but the most popular rejection is number one and number two. For number three, the prophecy isn't accurate. Okay, so according to Carmina here, that Saul did not die in the hands of the Philistines, but he died in his own. So the prophecy is not accurate, and therefore this could not be Samuel because if this is the prophet Samuel, then the prophecy will be fulfilled. Okay, whatever she said. Okay, so this is Carmina's, what do you call that? Carmina's take on, and many of you, she represented your answers clearly. Okay, and an additional is that because I challenged Rodney's answer, he gave 4 points and I challenged each one and he gave some reply. And according to him, for number two, he said, when a person dies, he can only go to two places, heaven or hell. And I assume that because Samuel was a prophet, he went to heaven. but then he was coming up from the ground. Okay, so that's another thing that Rodney put out as an argument that this could not be Samuel, because if Samuel went to heaven, he would not be coming up out from the ground. All right, so let me now give you the answer. Okay, but again, this is a good exercise. Okay, all right, we will go back to the text, because remember, in the Old Testament, we will approach the text as it is. Okay, so we will acknowledge that this text is an ancient text written by ancients for ancients using their ancient worldview and their ancient conventions. Okay, so that's why I'm going back to the text to explain to you that the spirit who came up out from the ground is none other than Samuel himself. Okay, don't be shocked. All right. And the number one reason for this is that in the text, there is no indication that this is not otherwise. The text is actually saying it was Samuel. The woman saw something, okay, because she was given an instruction to call Samuel. So we don't know the rituals she did, but she did call Samuel, the name Samuel, the prophet. And then when she was asked to describe, here the text said, okay, that let me just say, let's read it together, because this is what the text said. Then, okay, let me highlight. Okay, so uh, according to here, then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed face down to the ground. Okay, so from the text itself, again, we have to bend our necks. We have to respect what the text reports. This is what the text is saying, that it was Samuel. Okay, and uh, so we will just take the text at face value. Okay, now, so this is number one. And then he made a conversation with Saul, and the conversation between Saul and Samuel is very consistent with the Samuel when he was still alive. Okay, the wordings, and even when Saul asked him, "Tell me what to do." Okay, so Samuel replied, and then this is his reply, and his reply is very consistent to his previous pronouncement against Saul. So here Samuel is affirming what he has already said. The message of the Lord did not change. Okay, so what especially look at this verse 17. He has done what he has said he would do, the things he said through me. So this is spirit is telling Saul at that point that, this is, why are you surprised? The reason it's happening is because this is what the Lord has said through me. Even the spirit is affirming that he is Samuel himself. So now there are two things affirming the identity of Samuel. First, the narrator of the story, okay, because the first one is the one we saw here. Then Saul knew it was Samuel. This is the perspective of the narrator. So the narrator is telling this story, and the narrator affirms this is Samuel. Part of narrative criticism is to look at what the narrator is saying, and then look at what the characters are saying. So here, the narrator reports that this is Samuel who is talking, and then this is Samuel's speech. And the spirit, or Samuel the spirit, is affirming that, okay, it is he, because he just reminds, okay, Saul of, the words that God has spoken through him. So, two things from the text that we can say. So, nothing in the text will indicate that this is another person or another spirit other than Samuel. So, by just taking the text and respecting the story, okay, we're not reading things into the story, we're reading things out of the story. This is what we call as exegesis. We will let the text speak for itself. Okay, so from this text, it looks like that the narrator narrating this story is convinced that this is Samuel, and in his report, the very words that Samuel the Spirit said, is consistent with when Samuel was still alive. Okay, so looking at this, we will say that the Hebrew text is confirming this is Samuel. Okay, now let's go back to some of your objections that why this is Samuel. Okay, number one, here's the thing. And again, I don't blame you, okay? I don't blame anyone for saying this is not Samuel. But I just want you to be aware of this, okay? Because what happened is, when you read the text, you read it from the perspective of a modern day Christian, okay? You are a modern day Christian, and all your preconceptions are there. So when you read the text, your preconception kind of made you give some explanations, which is really not in the text. Uh, give some explanations in order to explain this passage. And this is what I want to teach you in the Old Testament. You have to respect the text. Remember, this was written for ancients at that time, okay, in order to communicate the truth about God and His message to His people at that time. So we have to respect what the text is trying to say to them. And I believe this hasn't changed, okay? And that, so that's the thing. Your Christian preconceptions is blocking your view, okay? Because in the Christian perspective, those who die cannot come back, okay? Number one. Therefore, this is not Samuel. Because, from the New Testament theology, from Christian theology, those people who die, cannot come back anymore. Well, it is true, when Christ affirmed that. But back then, we're talking about, the time of Samuel, the time of Saul, the time of David. And during that time, God is still disclosing Himself. And so probably at that time, it's still allowed. Now, another thing is this. You also have to understand that back then, spirits, their demonology is not yet fully developed. Even at the time of Christ, the teachings about demons and Satan is still in progress. The understanding, the theology, demonology, and so on. Much more at the time of David. In the Old Testament, they don't have this personified evil yet. Okay, this idea. True, there are evil spirits or unclean spirits, but this is not the same way as we understand it today, as Christians, and with advanced idea on demonology. And therefore, the ancients who read this text would say this is indeed Samuel who came back from the dead, as a spirit, not the bodily Samuel, but spirit of Samuel came back in order to talk to Saul. So now let me go back to this contention or objection of Rod. He said, well, if this was Samuel, why did he come up from the ground and not from above, since he went to heaven? Again, the understanding of the ancients is that they don't have a clear understanding of heaven and hell yet, at that time. So all people, whether righteous or unrighteous, will all go to the same place called Sheol, or the place of the dead. That's where the dead goes. So everybody goes there. Somehow they only have a hope that the righteous ones will not remain in Sheol, that one day God will bring them back out of Sheol to be with Him forever. And there are many terms mentioned later on in the Old Testament as their theology developed. But one of the terms is Abraham's bosom. By the New Testament times, by the time of Jesus, then they have this kind of idea that the righteous people go to Abraham's bosom. And where Abraham is, they believe that's where God is. Okay, so but they don't have a clear understanding of heaven and hell yet. And therefore, where is Sheol from the perspective of an ancient person? Sheol is down there. underneath the ground. And therefore, Samuel coming up out of the ground is natural. That's the most logical place where Samuel can come from. Okay? So, indeed, the coming up out of the ground is consistent with their worldview. Yeah, that's how they understood things. So if had Samuel come up from from the heavens, or then that would be more scandalous and more. They wouldn't understand that. How come Samuel came from there, and so on. So again, you have to remember God is trying to communicate this truth, okay, to his people, and this is the way they would have understood it, and so that's the way it's being communicated in the text. Again, I'm all for respecting the text. This is what the text is saying, so we'll just take it as at face value, even though it goes against what we understand right now, even though we are very uncomfortable with this idea. Okay. I would like to go back to what Carmina said about the prophecy. Actually, the prophecy did come true. The Spirit said that you will be handed over to the Philistines. You and your sons will be handed over to the Philistines tomorrow. What it just means is that Saul and Jonathan and the whole Israelites will experience defeat. Okay, that's just a term. And that means being handed over to the enemies, meaning, their military campaign will come to an end. They will be routed. They will be destroyed. They will be, defeated. So it's just one way of saying that. Now, and the second part is, you and your sons will be with me tomorrow. So where is that? Where is Samuel? Well, Samuel is in Sheol. And tomorrow, Saul and Jonathan will join him in Sheol, the place of the dead. And it came to pass. Okay, it came to pass. The next day, they both died. Jonathan died, and then Saul died on Mount Gilboa. And yes, he committed suicide. Okay, but still, after the king died, then they were defeated. Okay, so the prophecy came true. Now, and this is another, from the perspective of the text. Okay, from the perspective of the text, it's saying that this spirit who claims to be Samuel, this spirit who is being reported as Samuel by the title, or by the text, he gave a prophecy and it came to pass. Okay, it happened. Now, the next day, that means, okay, the test of the true prophet, right? The prophets will say something, and if it comes to pass, it's a true prophet. And nothing in the message of this spirit contradicts what the prophet Samuel has spoken when he was still alive. So it's very consistent. And there's no point in sending an evil spirit or a lying spirit to Saul just to deceive him, because Saul is already deceived even beforehand. The moment he decided to stay away and disobey, stay away from Yahweh and disobey Yahweh, then he already deceived himself. And then and so yeah. So for those of you who are still thinking, the text, the Hebrew text, the Bible affirms that this is Samuel. Now, in order for you to give you some comfort, okay, this never happened again. Okay, a person coming back from the dead, or the spirit not coming back from the dead, but the spirit of the dead person coming out of Sheol. He's already in Sheol, and then he came back. Never happened anymore. Okay, this is the only one. This is the only instance, and we can say that as a one-time event, God allowed it to happen. And just like what Vin said, it doesn't mean that just because God prohibits it, that it cannot happen. Okay, and actually Vince said the fact that God prohibited it means that people are doing it and they're successful in doing it. Okay, you gotta think about that. Because if it is only or it doesn't really work, then I don't think God will spend much of his time saying, okay, don't do this. He knows that there is danger to doing this, and this can happen. And because of that, he forbid his people from doing it. Okay, so that's all for Ledaber Mem. I hope that you have learned something. Again, don't be afraid to take the text for what it is, even though it goes against what you are comfortable with. Okay. Again, in the Old Testament, let us learn to bend our necks and to read from right to left, because that's how the Hebrews communicated God's truth to us. Okay, that's all, and see you for Ledaber noon, another good discussion. See you later.